This is Rugby Unity. I am David Pembroke and Ewan McKenzie. The teams have been selected for the first match of the resumption of the Rugby Championship. Take us through what you've seen and what are the three things that you think people need to pay attention to this weekend.
That's the world's longest question you've just thrown at me there. I mean, there's a lot. The Wallabies have just come out, lots of changes. Obviously, some of those forced, but some not. So in the back line, you've got McDermott first start. O'Connor, obviously we know about that. Tools come back in. Ikitau's come back in. So Ali's the only guy in the same position in the back line as from the last game. Potter's back in. Jorgensen's gone to fullback. So 6 out of 7 backline positions have either changed personnel or changed position. And in the forwards, Slipper, Tupu's still there, Frost, so Solika Lotto is getting a start, so that's a change. Hooper's gone back to 6, which we expected. Fraser right, Harry Wilson, so not too many surprises there. Probably Williams not starting, and Lotto's starting, so they've gone for a bit more firepower, I guess, in the first part of the game. And on the bench, you've got Alatoa coming back. Tazano's still there. Ryan Lonergan's getting his first start off the bench. So Edmund's there on the bench, so he's dropped to the bench. So yeah, there's quite a few changes, I guess, in terms of the Wallabies, and in the All Blacks, they've got some experienced halfbacks coming back in. Roygard and Radham has come back in. Caleb Clark on the wing. So they got a bit of experience come back in there in the forward pack. Interestingly, the change there was with Barrett, the captain, dropping out, injured. So you've ended up with Holland and Tupavau in the second row, which I think is a good combination. So I think that probably might help their line-out. So there's a bit in all of that. There's a lot of change from both sides, actually. So it's hard to read. But in terms of the 3 points you talked about, the things for me that are key in the game, line-out, who wins the line-out is probably going to win the game. And Australia's been doing pretty well in that era, so I think Frost coming back in, they'll be trying to maximise pressure there and trying to upset the rhythm of possession. The aerial battle will be interesting with the back three of the Wallabies. You've now got Toole, you've got Jorgensen at fullback, Potter. They obviously rate Potter his aerial skills, but you've got Toole back in, who was dropped previously, and you've got Jorgensen playing at fullback. I think he's only played 13 minutes at fullback this year. And then the contest's really going to be the ruck. You've got the Italian referee from the test match. I can't remember which test it was. We've had him already, so I think he'll be all right. But the ruck contest will be the game. And you've actually got two similar sides. You've got two sides that like to contest for the ball at the breakdown. So that battle will be really interesting to see who can win that, who can obviously defend well, but then put pressure on the ruck speed and the ruck possession. So they're the three things for me in the game, the three sort of things to look at.
Okay. Eddie Jones, your thoughts on Ewan McKenzie's three things that people need to look at?
Yeah, well, I think he's pretty spot on, mate. The breakdown, the aerial contest and the set piece. But I was just, trying to catch up to things a little bit this morning. Been offline for a few days, traveling around Europe like a backpacker. It's been like a Kontiki tour. One night, every night a different city. So, but just trying to get a line through the two teams. I really struggle to see where either team can be dominant. I think they're both All Blacks, maybe by not, but a massive state of flux at the moment. Yeah, you look at the Barris out, who's been the most stable type 5 forward. You got a young guy, Holland in. Yeah, that supervisor seems to do most of his best work after the whistle. It's not a settled team. It's hard to get a real line on. Usually in a Bledisloe Cup, one team goes in as a pretty strong favourite, and the other team's the underdog. But you try to get a picture of the game. And I'm really struggling. I just watched a little bit. Scott Robinson this morning doing his press conference, because I think it always gives you a pretty good indication of where the team at. And like all coaches these days, mate, they're told to smile. He was smiling, but I don't think he was smiling on the inside. He had someone like you with him. You could smile, best day in your life. He's up there thinking, this is the best. This bloke's told me it's the best day of my life, but it's not really the best day. I've just lost my captain. And the thing that struck me about the press conference was how much he was taken back to the South African game. They kept asking about it and he kept going back to it. So how do they get their focus in New Zealand? Because after a loss like that in New Zealand, the pressure, the media pressure, outside pressure, fan pressure, New Zealand rugby pressure be immense. Like we can't discount that. And Barrett was obviously, a very good captain or a guy that's improving his captaincy would keep things pretty calm for the team. So you'd then be thinking, how do they cope with that pressure? Australia, as Luke alluded to, a lot of changes. If you just go through it, the 9 and 10 both aren't strong kicking players. They can both kick. But Tate's not he's not picked for his box kicking. He's picked for his running game. And I think Australia will try to attack them more because they're probably go in with a little bit more of a settled team and probably a little bit more confidence. They know how they want to play. Whereas New Zealand after the last test to be thinking, well, we're not quite sure how we want to play. I think, as Ewan said, the contests are right, but to get a line through it, if you're a gambler, I reckon you'd be struggling to get a form line on these two teams. The only other thing I'd say, I think Australia's done really well, and I think everything they're saying about Australia being persistent, but the bottom line is they've won 3 or 7 tests. Yeah. Unless I'm miscalculating. So, there's still a team in development.
If you looked across, I agree with what Eddie's saying there in terms of it's hard to read. If you looked across the two teams and you break it down forwards, backs for both teams, you got to say the most settled sector is the Wallaby forwards. And I think what they'll do with Luke and Lotto coming in, I think they might try and go right back to, obviously what's been working for them, that sort of 11 pattern or the Z pattern or whatever you want to call it, zigzagging their way, playing the short side, using those heavy bodies and trying to punch up. It's an easier game for Tupu to play and be involved in. And I think McDermott, they're hoping with he might snipe a bit better. So Eddie's right about the running, but it'll be sniping in and around and trying to keep those forwards going forward and try and occupy New Zealand in that way. I think New Zealand will be able to cope with that possibly better than some of the teams they have in the past because they're a bit more agile up front, but they're a slightly newer combination and lacking their leader. So that's, for me, sort of the clearest part. The rest of it, backline versus backline, really hard to read. I see an aerial battle there to see who's going to be who flinches and who can come up with the goods there. So, so it's hard to read. It'll be a good game just to watch and see how it develops. The referee, I don't think he'll have an influence on the game. I think it'll be sorted out by the two teams bashing, and it's probably who's going to defend better. The one-on-one situations, like the guys like the Jorgensens and Suwalis, whether they can get those sort of one-on-one scenarios and get ball away, whatever, which they've been doing really well, or scoring themselves, and whether New Zealand can find some cohesion. I think Royguide coming in for New Zealand's good. I don't know how fit he is, but I think he's naturally a fit guy. He scored a try on the weekend coming off the bench, so he's that sort of guy that can sniff a break and provide some momentum. He's a robust 9. So and even Radimer coming on will give him more in that area. So I think they'll be a bit more dynamic in that 9 area, and that might make it a little bit easier for Beauden Barrett to function. But as we've talked about, there hasn't been much momentum from the New Zealand backline. They've been playing very deep, struggling to get across the advantage line. So I'll be keen to see what they've done to try and rectify that.
Well, it's going to be wet, 80%, 85% chance that it will rain. So I think you can probably, that obviously will come into it. But why do you pick the line out as the key contest? Why do you say that who wins the line out wins the game? Why is it so fundamental?
I think there's been more possession coming out of that sector of the game. The scrums have been turning into free kicks, as we've discussed many times already. So sometimes the scrums don't turn into anything other than the restart of play with a free kick. So I think the quality of line-out balls is probably what I'm talking about. New Zealand, I think, have had one really good game with the line-out, but other than that, they've been a bit patchy. And obviously they'll be hanging their hopes on Cody Taylor coming in, and he'll certainly make a difference in terms of experience and throwing. And you've got, I mean, when Holland plays, they hit him a lot. But Frost he's clearly a good strategist, good organised, does the hard yards in terms of analysis. So I won't be surprised if, Frost's all over Holland, and that means that Tupavai's got to come up with the goods, and then maybe Parker. So they've got, we'll see how that rolls out from a tactical battle. But it is a battle within a battle, and I just think the quality of possession there, whether you ever get on the front foot or whether you're always getting the ball scrappy, loose, and then you've got to try and turn that into front foot ball, which is much, much harder. I think New Zealand would love to be able to get some momentum off the line out, and maybe they'll, I've played against them before and they've come up with a few surprises. If they've got a few surprises, it'd be a good time to bring them out.
Eddie Jones, what about some of the contests? You talk about the contestability there on the ground, Savea versus McReight. How do you think that'll play out?
Both of them are going to rely on what the tight five does, who gets a bit of ascendancy on ruck speed. I think McReight is going to be absolutely influential for Australia, particularly if it's a tight game. I think New Zealand might come down route 1 too. So it might be a tough old-fashioned one pass around the ruck. Who can win that ruck speed? Who can get enough? And then you got two 10s who are both probably not traditional 10s. They both like to take the ball from a second touch rather than the first touch. And who can take that one or two opportunities? Can they kind of pick up the opportunities of when to go and when to shift the ball? And the same with Beauden Barrett, if he can take that opportunity. So McReight, Savea, that's a big one. But I think, as you alluded to, Cody Taylor coming in will give a lot more stability to the scrum, a lot more calmness around the line-out. So he's going to be pretty influential as well.
And the referee, Piatti, how do you think what his impact will be? Ewan's thinking maybe not so much. What's your views on him and how he may contribute to the way the game is played?
I think he's going to have plenty to do, mate. He's not going to have an easy day. It's going to be a high contest game, particularly, given it's a Birthday Cup. Australia hasn't won one for 23, 24 years. New Zealand are probably under more pressure than they've ever been for a long time. So it's going to be a highly contested game. Got his team over with us, one of those blokes who just wants to go in and have a nice cut sandwich, can of Coke, and sit there quietly, or wants to be on the television a lot. So we'll find that out pretty quickly. Like, we had a situation on the weekend where Fiji had, for 6 minutes, one player too many. And out of the match commissioner, the TMO for the TMO, none of them could pick it up. And we made complaints on the sideline, nothing happened. So you don't know what's going to happen. I was speaking to another test coach yesterday, I won't mention his name. We were talking about the fact that at the moment, you don't know what you're going to get. You really don't know what you're going to get. So whilst Ewan's right, he mightn't be influential in his decision-making. What happens off the field might be influential in the game.
Well, certainly Felipe Contepomi, after he won the game in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, I think one of his first comments was that, again, not satisfied with the quality of the adjudication around the game. And just to let people know, we have approached World Rugby, and we will be getting the opportunity to speak to somebody once this test window closes. So later in October, we are going to get somebody from World Rugby onto the program so we can have a longer conversation about the refereeing and where to from here.
It's just a bit of an abyss there, Pemby. I mean, Contepomi, he went to the press conference and he said the same things he saw exactly the same things we saw in terms of the mystery that goes on. He's exactly the same reference points. I talked about it. Eddie wasn't there. We talked about Eddie's game on the weekend and I didn't see that. I didn't see the numerical situation, but there were yellow cards that were missed. There's other issues with, as I said, with teams that are playing cynically, and then it's just negated by a try, and they just go back to halfway and kick off again, and there's no sanction for the cynical play. It's only sanctioned if there's no try, and so that's almost is that the way it's played? Does the try negate three separate incidents of cynical play? I don't know. But that's what seems to happen. But it doesn't happen in every game. Other games, the referee will reward the try, then walk over and put someone in the bin. So what is it? So I think they've got to really. And what you get is just a mystery that we talk about it, and no one ever seems to clarify anything. So Eddie's traveling the world, talking to other coaches, and everyone's having the same experience. So if it's that frustrating from a coaching point of view, and it must be frustrating on the field for the players. What about the fans? We're trying to make it an easy game for them to comprehend, not a mystery tour.
Anyway, we will get some of those. At least we'll continue to run this conversation as we seek to help secure the future prosperity of rugby union around the world. And really, the refereeing is such a key part of that. We will keep asking questions until we do get some answers and perhaps changes in behaviour. Now, you and Mackenzie, you also during the week we were discussing the notion of the changing role of 10 and this notion of robustness that you were sort of talking about. Is the role changing? Is the way the game's playing that we're seeing an evolution of the requirement of the number 10? What was it? Just explain to the audience just exactly that theory that you've got at the moment about the evolving role and nature and even composition of the physicality of the 10.
Oh, well, it's just, we've talked earlier in the year about the 10-12 and the skill factor and whatever, but it's becoming evident. I guess James O'Connor's probably highlighted that his sort of cameos coming into the game are about, it's about a robust player who's prepared to go to the line, take contact, but work in that space. Whereas other players, lesser experienced and lesser physically developed, they tend to drop back, and you end up with this is not new, but you end up with a deeper game. So I'm just starting to think that you need, with the quality of the defences you're playing against, you need guys that are going to committed to get you across the advantage line, and they might have to do it themselves. And I don't know, I'm not sure where we're going, but you need to have some X factor in that. But you need to have the ability to get to the advantage line or take the back line to the advantage line. If you end up just standing back and watching or trying to kick your way out, and we've seen it in recent games. Carreras does a great job for Argentina. He's a very skillful and exciting player to watch, but he doesn't mind doing the hard yards when he's carrying the ball. So I'm thinking that one of the prerequisites is it's more than a passing position now. It's really a running position in the current defensive, because you need to have that as part of the repertoire. I'm not saying you're just going to cart the ball up, but you need to have it as part of the repertoire. And I'm not sure that in terms of the best 10, and obviously Australia's developing a bunch of guys at the moment. You need to have a guy that's going to go and take the line on and get to the advantage line as quickly as possible, but also play in that space with limited space. And O'Connor's done it a couple of times, and it's all Mark Ellis stuff. Just those little runarounds he scored. We've seen 2 tries scored just by him running around Suali twice, and getting the ball back. But it's all in limited space, but going forward.
Eddie Jones, your views on Ewan Mackenzie's theory, the emerging theory around current day 10s.
When you're able to generate good ruck speed, one of the key things is the 10 to be able to attack the line flat to keep the defence chance to recover. And I think Ewan's 100% right. I think, O'Connor has less decisions to make, which I alluded to before, because they play a lot off night. I think that allows him to really inject to make sure you got the attack right on top of the defence. And the robustness part, I think, you remember back, we used to play Rod K for a 10. You look back, like a Henry Huntingball now playing a 10 it'd be pretty hard to handle. That goes back to what we were speaking about in opposition to New Zealand, who have increasingly for some reason, got deeper and deeper. Bowden very rarely takes the ball as first receiver takes his second receiver, which allows the defence to recover. Because every pass you have and every pass you have going backwards allows the defence to come forward. And if you have made a short fracture in the defence line, allows them to recover. So I think Ewan's spot on what he's saying. I think the other part of that is that over the next 10 years, I reckon, if the game keeps getting quicker, we'll see this evolution as has happened in rugby league, where the back three are smaller, quicker guys that can really, really hurt people in small space. I think Cheslin Colby's probably shown the way with the little guy with Japan. He's going to be good. He's only a 23-year-old, again, tiny guy, but good feet, can beat people in a phone box, and those sort of players might come back in.
Okay, then. Well, time to pick a winner. Ewan Mackenzie, you first. As you say, perhaps a little bit hard to find a line through it. We know what the conditions are. We know who the referees are. We know who the teams are. We've discussed the impact of the game and way it may be played. Who gets there on the first Bledisloe of 2025?
Well, obviously I'd love it to be Australia, and I'll be sentimental and I'll tip them to be able to squeak through. But to win the Bledisloe, you've got to win both games. So you to do something different. This team has proved to be able to do things a little bit differently and be a bit effective. So hopefully they'll prey upon New Zealand's uncertainty at the moment and might just squeak through, but I don't think there'll be much in it. So, it's going to be tight.
But when you look at, as Eddie Jones said before, Australia hasn't held the Bledisloe since 2002. Australia 39-game losing streak at Eden Park. New Zealand 51 in a row at Eden Park. Does any of that mean anything as we go into the game? Does it sort of create any sort of influence to the context that creates the pressure, that creates the moment?
Only if it gives you guys like yourself fodder to ask the question. But if you want to let it be a distraction, you can. But in the end, you're going out there to play in the circumstances. You've got to get your tactics right. You've got to have your mental attitude right. The only thing that concerns me about Australia is there's a lot of positional changes in the backs, and whether there's the cohesion that they've had in recent weeks, but they've had great X factor from some specific guys, and I'll get some energy out of the halfback. So I don't think they'll be sitting there worried about the record at all. I'd be surprised if they even talked about it. It just gets shoved in your face all the time. But I don't think it's not. You can't control. You can't change the history. It is what it is, So all you can do is go out and deal with the moment. And so I'm sure they'll be in the moment. They've been quite good. One thing Australia has been as good is playing in the mental space, and they've been resilient and tough. And hopefully that survives in this game and gets them there after 80.
Eddie Jones, who wins it for you?
Well, I'd keep the money in pocket, mate. I wouldn't be having a bet. I wouldn't go to the TAB this week. I think it's a really, really hard one to pick. I think Australia will play 12-man rugby. So they'll play the two centres with the 8 forwards, and they'll try to play through the All Blacks. And as you alluded to, the All Blacks missed a lot of tackles against South Africa. So it's going to test their tackling more so than the defence system, although they will have to make adjustments to defend against Australia, maybe get a little bit tighter around the ruck to stop them coming through there. New Zealand,
I don't think anyone knows how they're going to play. I would presume that they'll play a little bit tighter with Rogart there, getting to run, play off him more. But I don't think there's going to be much in the game. I think it's going to be a low scoring, tight affair that's going to come back to who can really execute under pressure in a key moment in the game. So 68-minute mark, 3 points between the teams, nothing between them. And then the referee's going to make a decision that's going to win or lose the game for one team. That's what I put my money on.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, listen, we'll quickly move on to the South Africa-Argentina match, but I do want to get your views before we leave the discussion around Australia, that the news this week that Mark Nawaqanitawase, the outstanding footballer who moved from rugby to the Eastern Suburbs Rugby League team in Sydney, is coming back to play for Australia in the 2027 Rugby World Cup. It's big news. He has gone across the rugby league and really set a standard, I think, for a player making a transition. He's been probably the best winger in the whole rugby league competition, of which there are many, scored some remarkable tries through the season and has been a real excitement machine. First to you, Ewan McKenzie, clearly as a coach, good players are exactly what you're looking for. So from an Australian point of view, it is all good news.
Well, I think it's certainly going to deepen the well there for outside backs, and he's obviously a guy that's got freakish talents, and he's a big tall guy too. When you see him out there playing in the league, he's tall, so he's got that additional aerial skills, which in leagues no doubt been able to hone and assist on. But it is a slightly different game, so assuming if you're going winger for winger, the role's a little bit different, but he'll be much better for the broader experience. And it's good for Australian rugby to have that sort of depth to be able to pick talent from. And in the end, you need a bunch of X factor guys. Bob Dwyer always used to say that you need 5 world class players in your team to be able to win a World Cup. So you got to start. That's if anyone's out there sitting there, worried about your international team. Well, count how many in the starting 15 would be picked in a World 15. Like if everyone just picked a World 15. You need those sorts of guys. You need to have 5. So according to Bob, and I think he's pretty right. And so you've got to start looking at teams saying, where are those world-class players? So we're developing a few, and having someone like him who's potentially world-class. He left rugby. He was a winger and he's in and out of the team, but I think he's been an improved player for the experience. And hopefully he can slot into that and be one of those world-class players in the future.
Well, certainly his physical development since he's gone to rugby league, he seems to have, bulked up even more. Hasn't lost too much of his pace or his skill, but he is a absolute weapon and will be a player to watch at the 2027 World Cup, if indeed he is selected, which I'm sure he will be, but if he maintains his fitness. Now, before we go to the South African-Argentina match, which will be played in Durban on Saturday night, South African time. Unfortunately, it clashes with the Women's Rugby World Cup final between Canada and England. They're on at the same time. But the match to be refereed by Australian Angus Gardner. It'll be dry, 23 degrees. But before we talk about that, just a few of your comments as we like to feature here the third voice on Rugby Unity. Brian Moore has said, I watch that game, Eddie, which is referring to the Fiji and Japan final. What stood out for me was the passing, mate. Precise, fast and with intention. Great skills. The Fijians were digging deep towards the end but held out. Good game, man. Good game. Now, Zach Burkholtz has emailed us and said, absolutely love the podcast. Listen every week as I do to all the rugby podcasts. You're exactly right when saying that rugby information is so hard to obtain in the widespread media unless you're a rugby tragic like myself and have to go searching for it. Eddie and Ewan are great rugby brains and they add great insight into the game. Now, we do have some questions that we'll come to a little bit later in the program, but first of all, back to South Africa and Durban. Ewan McKenzie, to you again. I'll get you to lead off. There's been some changes. Willemse back to fullback. Damien Dialende in at 12. Lou De Jager is out injured. Eben Etzebeth is in for him. 5-3 bench. The Boks have won 4 of their last 5 in Durban. And at the time of recording, we still as yet have not seen the Argentinian team. But a dry day in Durban. What are you expecting?
Well, I think that if you're going to play South Africa anywhere, Durban's a good place to play. And the conditions are sounding good. And I think Argentina's been there for a while. So they've been on the road for a bit, Argentina, and they've got a bit of travel and obviously the London game as well. So that puts pressure on you when you're away and moving around. But I think they'll be very focused. The Springboks are showing some consistency in selection. Obviously, a few injuries. Etzebeth coming in. Well, you've got a world-class 150 capper coming in. But you've got the blend now. You've got the forward pack that seems to be settling down with their best players. Visa's there at number 8, I really like. And then the back line's that X factor. There's that X factor there. A couple of changes, but I don't think it really changes the mentality and how they'll play. So I think where Rassie started the season and it fell apart against Australia, he's going to stick with that and work well for him last game, and hopefully they'll back it up. For Rassie's perspective, they'll back it up and get another good performance. But you got similar teams. I like the enthusiasm and the panache of the Argentinian side. So I think that they play just a little bit wider than other teams like Australia and whatever. So they'll run the forwards around a little bit more if they get possession. So the aerial battle will be important. So you've got two. I wrote down. For me, I thought Durban is a good opportunity there. So that'll cancel. I think that'll be good for both teams. Argentina been on the road. I mentioned that. And it's really, the question for me is whether the South African backline handles the attack of Argentina, because they do their phase attack is quite good, but they get a lot of width. They stand their wingers or their players right on the sidelines to get full maximum use of the field, and how that works is you've got to revise. Without Creel there, he always led the defence. He's not playing. Moody's more of an attacking player than a defensive player. So what does that look like, backline v backline, from set piece, etc.? Do they get the same line speed they used to? So does Argentina get the width in the game they'd like? And then therefore, is the Springbok pack running further than they would do in a normal game in terms of defence? So they're the real question marks for me, but I think it'll be an exciting game. I can't, South Africa will win easily, or it could be very tight. I think if Argentina get there, it'll be just.
Well, Rassie Erasmus did name check the Argentinian centres this week during his media, talking about them being sharp and being a threat. Cinti coming out of the sevens, Chocobares being a very effective player. Mateo Carreras, I think, is the most effective ball runner at the moment across the Rugby Championship, making plenty of ground. And you mentioned Santiago Carreras, a good player, but also a threat with his kicking. He's not only his field kicking, but he's kicking for goal as well. So Eddie Jones, how do you see, and what are the three things that you're focusing on, or what people should focus on as they look towards this match at the weekend?
Just going on with what Ewan said, how South Africa closed down Argentina's swing attack. They generally play the same way, and then they, on about their third phase, they try to get at least a two-layered attack where they can hit the front line or go out the back and then try to play around them. So South Africa have traditionally defended that by coming hard up on the inside, and the open side winger can come as far in as the near post to try to close that down. So Argentina would have practiced against that sort of defence all week, and it's their ability to pick them off and sometimes play inside of that, sometimes try to play outside of that, but just to pick them off. And one of the advantages they got is with, as you mentioned, the two centres, Chocobares and Cindy are both big, strong players. They stay on their feet well. They carry hard. So they might try to go through them a little bit more early, Argentina. And then Argentina be thinking about, right, how are we going to cope with this South African barrage of high balls? Because if you look at the previous tests, as we spoke about, I think South Africa won 9 of the first 10 in the air and then played some scintillating rugby off the back of that, shifting the ball with pace and precision. And then the third thing would be Angus Garden, who used to be the most spoken about referees, and certainly in the top echelons, fallen away a little bit. All these young guys that come through, Piadri, the Georgian guy. So this will be probably a pretty important test for him going forward. So he can be a bit edgy at times, can be a bit indifferent around the breakdown. So, who can get a bit of territory early, maybe take the benefit of those decisions early. Might see one team get out to a big lead. If I was a betting man, I'd back Argentina to get out quick. And South Africa to come home pretty strongly.
What do you mean by indifferent?
Well, I think some referees, are going to be really hard on space. So they're going to be really hard on the tackler rolling away. They're going to be really hard on the jackler going hands past the ball, which are generally the two things you're looking at. As a general rule. And sometimes you got referees who are really consistent in that area, and like a Paul Williams who's really consistent in that space area, particularly at the start of a game, whereas Gardner tends to be a bit of both, tends to try to please everyone. So you don't know where you are with him, which just it just makes it a little bit more difficult to get some rhythm in your game.
With the South African selection at 12, Damien de Allende, were you surprised that he was selected there, given the way that Esterhuizen played when given his opportunity in the second half against the All Blacks? Eddie Jones?
Esterhuizen's still in the 23, so he's going to play a role. Yeah. He's going to play a key role. So de Allende, from what I believe, is one of the key players in the South African side. He's a pretty relaxed character off the field, but when he gets on the field, he plays a great competitive spirit. He's a good breakdown player, and he's strong on his carry, and he's a good communicator in defence. So he's a pretty key play for them. So bringing him back in and having Esterhuizen to come off the bench, he seems to be finding his feet more in Test rugby now. It's taken him a while, but certainly seems to be finding his feet more. Comes on with a bit more power. Is a good combination for South Africa. So again, I think you've got to look at that combination of players starting and finishing. Has Esterhuizen been demoted or promoted? What's the more important role, starting the game or finishing the game? Traditionally we think about the starting player, but the finishing players can be even more influential than the starting guys.
What's your thoughts around that, Ewan McKenzie? Because if you do talk to any player, they want to have a jersey number 1 to 15, and they want to run out on the field. You're like this. I know Eddie Jones has been talking about and Michael Checker about finishes for quite some time, but certainly the mindset of the players is never that they want to play that role at the end. They always want to play that role at the front.
I've been an advocate of the starting and finishing. The role of the finishing players is important, and that's how I've always talked to players. Unfortunately, the numbering system, like if you in AFL, everyone has their number. Like it's got nothing to do with position, but we're stuck with positional numbers. And if you could just have your favourite number and you ran out there, it wouldn't matter as much, because you just got your whatever number you got in the back, 55 or whatever. So we're stuck with that. I tried to change that at one point, change it to Leicester used to play with letters on their back, and that all got changed. But they used to do that many years ago. But the rules are you got to have the numbers and you got to list them that way. So it does create that. The stigma, I guess, of not starting versus finishing. But we've seen in recent games, all the big games, the impact of players. O'Connor's probably a really good example across the season with Crusaders and in the Test program about how effective a guy can be just coming into a game for 20 minutes and making a difference, and facilitating tries and whatever. So it is become a really important role because the game's been allowed to become very stop-start and there's been more breaks, and they're obviously trying to fix that up with, timed penalty kicks and things like that to try and keep fatigue as part of the game. The impact of players, powerful players, skillful players coming in has become more prevalent from the bench. In the old days, you weren't allowed to use your bench unless you're injured, so you just had to keep going. And guys would get really tired. And you couldn't go off the field unless you're injured, and you certainly weren't going to go off injured and give the next guy a go. So you just kept plugging away. But fatigue was a big factor. So in the end of the game, you saw more things happening. So these days you've got to create it artificially by having guys full of energy and skill and power coming into the game, and they give you good pay. So it is a very worthwhile and valid role.
All right, give me a winner in Durban at the Hollywood Bets Stadium.
I'm going to go South Africa. As I said, it could be a lot, but I don't think so. I think South Africa might get there by a try.
Okay, Eddie Jones, for you, who do you think is going to win this match?
Shows you the influence of gambling now in our game when the stadium's named after a betting company. So we better have a bet on this one. In the figurative term, right. Of course. Yes. I think it'll be a really high scoring game. I think Argentina got plenty of points in them, and we know South Africa can score quickly, particularly with their personnel. So I think in this game, as I said, Argentina get out quick. South Africa come home and a win by 10 points, somewhere around there. But the other thing Ewan mentioned, I remember we spoke about it with the Brumbies a long time ago about players having their own numbers, and that's the key, mate. You should, as we've spoken about before, you should be able to name 23 players. They have their own number, and then before the game, you're allowed to announce your starting 15 and your finishes, and that's how we should change the game. And I think it'll make it far more interesting. And create better news, mate, as you're always talking about, and help rugby be commercially more successful.
I think we see in AFL and in cricket and whatever, when players are also wearing their own personal number, that allows the commercial, the merchandising side of things suddenly becomes more interesting because they've got their own number. So whoever is 55 for whatever team, and so you can, and the same in American sport, we've seen it. So I think there's an opportunity in that space, and I don't think it would matter in the game. I just want people to know who it is. So I think there's a real space there. So yeah.
Okay.
But I think for those gamblers out there, Quagga Smith to score the winning try. All right, I'll put my money on him. He can sniff the try line out off the bench. So put your money on him. Quagga Smith to score the winning try.
All right, we might see if we can find what that price that's paying and see how we go. But we're not betting. We're not taking any responsibility for that. All those qualifications that you have to put in place. Now, at the same time, the final of the very successful Women's Rugby World Cup in England will be played at the home of rugby at Twickenham. 82,000 people. Canada versus England. England clearly the favourites. Canada the form team coming into the final. Ewan McKenzie, just give us your thoughts, please, if you would.
Well,
England have won 62 of their last 63 Test matches, but it's a big weekend.
I'm smelling an upset. I thought I went back and had a look at some highlights, and I thought Canada's effort against New Zealand was really commendable. I mean, New Zealand had all the pedigree, and Canada dealt with them really well. Whereas I thought England, they didn't. It took a long time to finish off France. So I'm starting to think that the occasion's going to be big, and just because it's the home team doesn't guarantee you anything. So. I'm kind of hoping. I've got my money on Canada now. I'm starting to think that they've got the resources, the tools, good, well coached, that they might have something that'll put a bit of pressure on. So the question is, can they keep Kidun from scoring the winning or breaking the game open? She's been so good at doing that. And I was thinking about how do you keep it quiet, And so there's plenty of ways to do that. Don't give her the ball, obvious. But if you do kick, you can't just kick casually and let someone like that have the ball and have space. So if you're going to kick it to her, you got to bury her at the bottom of the ruck so she can't feature in the play for the next three phases. If you're going to kick it into the grandstand, make them have a line out, etc. So no counter attack, nothing like that. So you can manage the game, and I'm sure that Canada's smart enough to be able to do that, to take some of their key players out. But I wasn't convinced by England against France. I thought they'd do that, play that game better and easier. And people say maybe they're a bit rusty coming off easy wins all the way through. But I could say the same about Canada, but I thought Canada handled New Zealand really well. So and they had some really good attack in behind the ruck. I thought they attacked in round 9-10 really well, really good offloading team, very direct, got under the posts a couple of times, and they also scored out wide. So I'm smelling an upset there. Maybe the occasion might be too much, but, we'll see.
Well, Eddie Jones, if anyone knows what it's like to coach in England with expectation and pressure, it's you. Now, you've had a very busy 6 weeks or so while the tournament's been on, coaching your Japanese team, and you've now been flying around the world doing your reconnaissance mission for the end of season. So I'm not sure how much of the Women's Rugby World Cup you've been able to catch up with, but if you've been able to have a look, what are your thoughts? And looking towards this weekend, what do you think? The big final there at Twickenham.
So I've just got BBC on in the background here, and there's plenty of glimpses of the Red Roses anticipating a win. But I think, firstly, congratulations to World Rugby for hosting the World Cup. I think they've done a great job, and it's been fantastic for women's rugby. And I think, it's a real catalyst for the game to grow now. So well done to them. I think it's almost like a classic final, isn't it? You've got the favourite, the red hot favourite. They play, reasonably orthodox, pragmatic, efficient rugby. They've been the champion team for a long period of time. Got beaten in the last World Cup, so they're carrying that hurt from that last World Cup. Playing at home, it's the fairy tale World Cup win, isn't it? 82,000 at Twickenham. Everyone goes berserk. And then you've got this little upstart, in terms of rugby, this little upstart country, Canada, no resources. Their budget probably for the whole year is the budget that England spend in 3 weeks. That's the reality of it. And they play a more orthodox style of rugby, try to play out of the tackle, much more unstructured, much more... what's the French term for just play as you see it, whatever it is. But that's how, that's how they play. So it's almost the perfect final. You couldn't think of a better final. I've got no idea who's going to win, mate. I'd be just lying if I said anything, because I haven't seen enough of them, but I know enough of how they play to make a prediction on who's going to win. Yeah.
No, it's been Canadian team super impressive, particularly in that first half against New Zealand. And, they are a very well-coached, well-drilled, highly skilled team. And I'm a bit with you and Mackenzie. I just think that they are going to get there, but not that there is so much talent in this England team. It could go either way. So best of luck to both teams. Now, Eddie Jones, you'll be pleased to know that I'm holding the press release of World Rugby from the General Assembly, and it says, new strategy, the women's game, player welfare, and the Rugby World Cup at the top of the agenda of the 17th World Rugby General Assembly. So the strategy, it says here, with the future front and centre, delegates applauded a preview of World Rugby's new 5-year strategic plan designed to strengthen and grow the sport. Brett Robinson says, our strategy is bold but focused, grounded in our values, shaped by your insights and designed to grow commercial value, strengthen our foundations and deliver greater impact for everyone. And it goes on to say that the World Rugby Strategic Plan includes a purpose, vision, pillars and implementation steps. Now, the kicker in all of this is that it's been applauded and unanimously supported by the World Rugby General Assembly on the 24th of September, but it will be set for public launch in January of 2026. So I can't believe that they have endorsed some sort of plan and then said it's now going to be released to the public in January of 2026. So is it not finished? Is it not done? Are we not worthy of being told what is in this plan? Because that's a whole lot of not very much. So as a supporter of the strategic plan for the last 6 months, not however long we've been going here at Rugby Unity, I've got to say I'm a little bit disappointed that that's what we've got, that it's been endorsed, that there's obviously some sort of detail there, but we now have to wait with no explanation as to why it happens in January of 2026. Ewan Mackenzie, can you help me with a theory as to why the strategic plan that's just been released won't be seen by the public until January 2026?
No, I can't help you on that one. I mean, that's politics at its best. I mean, it's what's that? 4 months, another 4 months. So no, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I was reading an article about the how they're going to spend the $250 million in America. So I saw that broken down, but I don't know what that was. But it's all a little bit vague. Like there's 4 sort of basic areas and da da da. And I read it and I thought, I'm none the wiser for reading it. It's a lot of money, and that's just going to those 4 areas, but no real detail. So maybe they've got to add detail. That's all I can think. Somehow they've committed the money, so now they're going to give all the relative sectors of the game that are going to profit from the plan some opportunity to turn that into some fine detail, so that they can talk with absolute knowledge, because no one wants to hear motherhood statements. So maybe they're going to try and get it down to some tin tacks and be able to give the public some real facts in January. And they're going to give 4 months or 3 or 4 months to the respective areas of the game and give them a chance to put some meat on the bones.
Yeah, but it was first spoken about May.
No,
it was
I know.
Then September. Now it's January. Eddie Jones. Here's a free hit for you, okay? You can say whatever you like to me. I'm happy to take whatever lashing you want to give me for defending World Rugby and its strategic plan.
I was watching the USA Open tennis last week, which is probably more interesting. And tennis have embraced technology 100%. So now they just have, at the US Open anyway, they have a central umpire, and then everything else is Hawkeye. So there's no one running around in Lacoste cardigans picking up balls anymore, right? It's all technology, and it suits the game. It's improved the game, right? And I reckon the one thing we've got to work out in rugby, how do we improve the game using technology? Not just add it in as an afterthought. Like the big thing, Ewan goes on about it all the time. The big thing is to get the game right. All this other stuff is just crap, mate. Absolute crap. Like, it's important crap. I understand that if you're a politician. But how do you make the game better? Like, how much have they said in there about making the game better? Absolutely zero. Absolutely zero. So, yeah. Well, you can keep waiting for it, mate. You keep waiting for it. Keep waiting. You're like that, the drover's dog, mate. You just wait there until the drover comes back.
I was watching Eddie. It's funny you saying about technology. I was watching the baseball highlights on TV last night. They have a really good show where they show like the top 35, and you watch it, and it goes for an hour, and it's really good. And obviously, when the pitcher's pitching and you've got the square, the zone for the strikes and balls and whatever. But I read in the paper that they've just agreed to go to robot umpiring in baseball. Yeah. So I don't know what that means, but I assume they're going to probably use that image and do the strikes and balls from behind the pitcher, as opposed to maybe having a guy standing behind the catcher. I don't know, but again, embracing technology, because it worked pretty well. Every time they pitched the ball will be there, and the umpire was getting it right, but they're already doing it anyway. So the technology exists to be able to assist that game, and they must think it's good enough. So some progression there. We don't see the same in our sport, but that's interesting anyway.
So if we just
go,
I'll
stay tuned.
Just go. Can I just add something there?
Yeah. So, I can take okay. Way you go.
There was a company called Sportability. I'm sure they're still around, and Sterling Mortlock was involved in it, where they could measure whether the ball travelled forward or not from the hands. They haven't used that technology, and that's one of the things in the game. Like, how do we use technology to improve the game? But we just seem to be in this muddling period at the moment, and there appears to be no leadership on it at all. All we're talking about there is what you're speaking about in your headlines. Did you write that for Brett Robinson, mate? Hey?
No, I didn't.
Well, maybe you should. Maybe you should in the future.
No, I wouldn't have written that. written that because I'm a bit like, as Ewan said a couple of weeks ago, was it when you set objectives, what are the hard objectives? What are the measurable objectives? Now maybe we're going to find out in January, maybe we're going to not, but I was so deflated when I read that today. I looked at it and I thought, here we go. We're going to get some detail. And then we get, okay, we'll see you in 4 months' time. So anyway, I have sent an email to World Rugby to say, can you provide me with an answer? But yeah, that's a good point, I think, around technology. NFL the same. That they're all introducing technology to be able to take the game forward, and certainly we need to do. And I know, Sterling, I think he has a number of bits of technology that he's been trying to introduce, and I think they were successful enough with the technology that they had in the ball that the AFL has taken it up, so they can understand the distance that it travels and the speed at which it travels and the force with which it's been kicked. So, which all leads to further data, which makes it a lot, more interesting as to, what is actually happening on the field. So, anyway, there you go.
I bought the we got the grand final here, the AFL grand final this weekend. So I dutifully bought the $20 magazine that you get in the week of the grand final. But I bought it mainly because they have all these statistics they talk about, but they actually explain what the statistics are. So now I get what they crap on about in the commentary all the time. What I haven't worked out is whether it's actually a meaningful statistic. So when you actually, it's good though, because when they rank the teams, so they rank where Geelong is and where the Brisbane Lions are relative to the competition. So when I looked at them globally, of the 20-something statistics, there was only 2 where the 2 teams that are playing the grand final were in the top 1, 2 or 3 together. All the rest, they were like, so I'm thinking meaningful statistics is probably 2 out of the 20 that are actually relevant to this grand final in terms of why the teams are there, because all the other ones, there's this massive disparity. So, technology is great, but we've got to still hone in on things that make a difference and still be able to have that flexibility. But I love the forward pass technology. That sounds great. I mean, Rugby League could use that too. That'd be good.
So quickly before we go, we will take one question from the third voice, and it's from Adrian from Yamboona in Victoria. Love this podcast. Nothing else provides such in-depth strategic analysis, and it's a privilege to listen to the expertise of Eddie and Ewan. But a question, when and why did the box kick become such an integral part of the game? I don't remember it much in the 90s and the noughties. It gets a lot of criticism, particularly from Australian fans, but I quite like it, particularly an attacking box kick. Is it here to stay? So there's 2 questions there. When did it become a big deal? And is it here to stay? Ewan McKenzie, you can have first run at that.
Well, I don't know. It's obviously become more prevalent as defensive, as there's a lack of commitment to rucks. So you end up with a defensive wall. So the only way to get past it is to be able to, kick from a shallow position, so that obviously you get the best opportunity to get people onto the front foot. In the past, they used to pass back to the 10 and he'd kick forward, and so no one was onside until the winger or someone put them onside. So it's become the option to be able to beat a flat wall defence, because you see it in every game. Teams don't commit to the ruck. The defensive teams don't commit to the ruck. Once it's lost, the referee will make a call. It's lost, they'll get back on their feet quickly. And while they're building the caterpillar, so you have a look, count the numbers. There's 4 or 5 people involved in building the caterpillar to kick the box kick. They'll be lucky if there's two players from the defensive team in that ruck. There'll probably be 1. So they're all on their feet in a wall, so you can't run through it, so you're just going to pop it over the top. So that's been the way for some time. Eddie will probably tell us exactly when. So that's where the tactics, it's a stock tactic now rather than a surprise tactic. There are a few surprises when they're hot on attack. Sometimes they'll pop the ball over. It's not really a box kick, but it's a go-to, probably, in my opinion, overused. And we saw it the other day. There was someone dummied a box kick. They set up the caterpillar and then they actually played. And I thought, well, hooray! There's a little bit of variety and a bit of a surprise. So that was good. But fundamentally, it's become a stock tactic, and Eddie will tell us when it started.
Eddie Jones, when did things change?
I want to know where Yambula is, mate.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. I've never heard of it, but it's in Victoria, and I presume it's Yamboona, Victoria, Australia. So anyway, I'm sure it's a nice place.
I reckon they have good fish and chips,
So
mate. It might be worth a visit to fish and chips. Well, I think as Ewan said, as soon as the ruck stopped being a ruck, like the ruck's not a ruck anymore. It's if you look at rugby league, they have a vertical play the ball. In rugby now, we basically have a horizontal play the ball. So there's no need for defenders to go to the ruck anymore. And so you've gone from having generally 7 or 8 defenders on their feet now to generally 14 to sometimes 15. So to break that down, the 9 started box kicking, and particularly in England where, they've always had a more conservative, way to play the game. It's been a big part of the game in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's caught on in every part of the world. And when you're getting out of your own half now, rather than throw the ball back to the 10, where you've got no chase, you've got onside chases from 9, and particularly because the escort rule's gone out, where you can't protect the catcher, it's become even a more viable way of getting the ball back up the field quickly. So you can go 30 metres without having a rucker pass and get the ball back, which we've seen with South Africa do so well. So a good question, but it's going to stay in the game. It's going to become even more important. The quality of your box kicking, you just look, if you can nail your first 3 box kick and win that ball back, then you've got the opposition under pressure territory-wise. You've got possession. You're in a good position to start the game. And I think the stat is if you score the first try in Test rugby, your chance of winning the game is a bit over 70%. So it's going to be in the game for a long time.
So just further to that, Pemby, the thing that's struck me, and I've noticed it a couple of times now, is that no one's refereeing the chase from that caterpillar box kick. Like often the winger's in front, but no one's refereeing. If the TMO wanted to do something useful, he could actually go and rewind the video that far and make sure they do that in other sports. Make sure that the chaser is actually onside, because I'm telling you, they're definitely a metre or 2 in front of the ball every time, because depending on how the guy kicks the ball. So if the TMO wanted to be useful, they could rewind that, especially on tries. But Yamboona's east of Echuca, up near the Murray River. They're just south of the Murray River.
Chips.
Yeah, probably. It's up near the river. There's not much water up there at the moment.
Water skiing.
No,
not much water.
No, not much water. Yeah.
So we got picked up on a chase on the weekend. So they couldn't count the numbers. They couldn't count the numbers, but they could pick up our winger who was keen to get in the contest when you're giving about 6 inches.
That's why I wrote it down. Because it's the only penalty I've seen for it all year. I've seen so many. I've seen. Yeah, you got it. I was thinking. I meant to say that to you, and I'm thinking I've seen guys 2 metres offside, and you got the one that was so-called marginal, and it's the only one I've seen referee the whole year. So there you go.
So listen, a big thanks, Adrian from Yamboona, and everybody else out there, please, there are many, many of you, please keep sending the questions through and your comments. But listen, I do want to ask one final question from Laveni S. Inari, because it's relevant to another game that is being played this week, Samoa-Chile in Vina del Mar in Chile, expecting a crowd of around 24,000. It's the second leg of the World Cup qualifier after they drew in Salt Lake City last week. Laveni S. Inari says, what do you say about the demise of Samoan rugby? Quarterfinalists in 1991 and 95 Rugby World Cups, number 7 in 2012-13, and now they are struggling to qualify. Eddie Jones, you have had already some things to say about Samoa, but what do you say to Laveni about Samoan rugby?
Well, firstly, let's look at the game. I watched that game last week. Chile got out to a big lead, and it looked like how much they were going to win. And then Samoa came home and finished all over the top of them to secure a 32-all draw. Since that game, Samoa apparently, I don't know 100%, but they've had to send back 6 players to play in the Bunnings Cup, NPC. So they've lost 6 players out of the team already because they've got to go back and play NPC because that's where they get paid, right? And you say you can't blame the players. So you've got this situation where Samoa are basically looking for players everywhere. In all seriousness, they're looking for players to play from. So it's such a sad situation. To me, it reinforces the fact, if World Rugby wants to improve the game, start addressing these situations. So we need to go to the football model where we have international windows and that everyone's available. Everyone's available to play, because unless we do that, countries like Samoa are going to fall away, where their players have to leave Samoa, like for economic reasons, and they're playing overseas, and then their contract with the overseas club, they're not told not to play for Samoa, but they're said, well, if you don't stay with the club, what's going to happen to you? That sort of situation. So it's not healthy, mate. Not healthy at all. Really poor.
And a final word from you and Mackenzie, about Samoa and their place in the game, because as mentioned there, that's your era, 91, 95.
Yeah, no, they were hard yakka. I mean, I think we beat them, not by many, a couple of points in Pontypool in the 91 World Cup, so there wasn't much in it, in the mud at Pontypool. Look, Eddie's nailed it there. It's just the availability of players. Other countries are seeming to be able to get through that, but they haven't been able to get through that. I saw highlights of the game. Chile playing a bit like Argentina in terms of style, and Samoa a bit more direct. But it was a good game. It was willing. So it's a pity if it suffers just on player availability. And I think that's if World Rugby wants to get their strategic plan well and truly right, they need to have a look at that. It's top of the list to sort of try and give everyone the best chance to be the best team they can.
Come on, Pemby, sort them out, mate, World Rugby.
We'll let you know in January 2026. Yeah. Oh, seriously, 2026. Like, let's get on. But see, you're reading into the plans there in the USA, but until it's announced, you actually don't know what it is. And as you say, you've read an article and you've got to the end of it, and it's like, well, I'm no better off. There's no clarity about what's got to happen.
The problem is that you're losing time. So we already this issue we've just talked about here with Samoa. That's a week to week issue. Right, and we can't resolve that, and that's going to play out. Possibly great for Chile, probably not good for Samoa, and therefore, where does it go? It'll be because of the cycle and whatever. It'll be 12 months before there's any chance to rectify that on behalf of Samoa. But I'm looking at there. I saw a really good article. Lockie McCaffrey used to play for the Waratahs. He's been organising and funding shipping containers full of rugby gear going to Tonga to help support the grassroots game. He's done 5 or 6 shipping containers. There's stuff like that that's happening. Grassroots people really making a good effort to try and help the Pacific Island game prosper. But Samoa seems to have been left behind. Everyone else is getting a lick somewhere, Fiji, whatever. They've gone from strength to strength, but Samoa just seems to have dropped out of the race, which is really sad. And, I don't know what 4 months. Like 4 months is a long time. From a strategic plan, you want to get this stuff going because you're obviously working within the commitments already, the World Cup commitments and whatever else. You want to get as much bang for your buck. And so 4 months is just dead. No,
and the momentum off the back of the Women's Rugby World Cup, it's been a great occasion, great momentum, and we really needed detail to come out.
You want to announce something straight away. This is what's going to happen for Women's Rugby.
Bang. Let's go. Well, not only Women's Rugby, but everything else, and go. So anyway.
Do you reckon, just the last point on that, Pemby, do you reckon the Australian Rugby League might be encouraging some of those potential kangaroos who can play for Samoa to play for Samoa? Because I'm telling you, it's going to hurt the game. It's going to hurt the game in Samoa. If the kids can play rugby league for Samoa and they see these big superstars in Australia swap across and play for Samoa, and they've got that Pan Pacific Championship, we're going to be so careful. And this is where you got it. Like Ewan said, you got to be strategic and you got to be urgent to deal with these problems, because it's a threat to our game, mate. It's a serious threat to our game. I'm not saying Australian Rugby League's trying to be devious, but they're always looking for opportunities, mate. Any bloke who can run two sporting organisations at the same time, he knows what he's doing. We're struggling to have one bloke running one organisation. The horseman's pretty good, mate.
Well, they, just talking about rugby league and their push into the Pacific, they've got development offices in all of these countries now. They are funding. And as you say, rugby league is a direct and immediate threat to rugby union in the Pacific Islands. End of story. End of story. Yeah, end of story. So anyway, we will leave it there, I think, for this week. We do have other questions, and thank you, Third Voice. We'll come to those in the weeks ahead. Other news out of World Rugby, the bidding process for World Cup 2035 has all been launched. There's talk of a combined bid from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. Spain talking about putting their hands up. And Italy, I think, are also thinking about it as well.
How does this stuff this stuff gets organised regularly? Clearly, there's obviously because you get to travel and the people making the decisions get to have a good time. Because this stuff gets there's no delays on this stuff. This stuff gets announced. We'll be ahead of bloody, we'll be ahead of the bloody climate change soon. We'll be doing 2050 and beyond. World Cup in 2050.
It's a bloody good point, isn't it? It's a really good point Ewan's made.
They
can find the time to do this, but they can't find the time to help Samoa, Tonga, those sort of countries that are so intricate to the healthiness of our game. And you think about how much they've added to the game.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Anyway, they probably sent that strategic report from Doha, Qatar. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we'll see. I'm going to try to get a few answers because I am very disappointed. I'm not embarrassed because it had nothing to do with me, but I did hope that there might have been some changes and maybe there is not. But listen, I do want to finish on a positive note. There's a great podcast out at the moment. Maro Itoje is interviewed on a very prominent British it's actually a global politics podcast. Alistair Campbell, a mate of yours, Eddie Jones, and Rory Stewart, former British cabinet minister, and Maro Itoje, absolutely outstanding in his discussion with them. And I would commend all of you to jump onto the rest of politics and have a listen to it. He is an impressive young man, an impressive young leader, and certainly setting a great example as a personality and a leader in our game like Sia Khaleesi, Artie Savea and all these others. But we need more personalities, and I do commend that to you. I really enjoyed Murrow talking to Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart. But anyway, that is a wrap for us this week as we look forward to what will be a great weekend, the resumption of the Rugby Championship and the finalisation of the Women's Rugby World Cup in England. And the best of luck to all of the sides this weekend. So a rating, a review, please keep it coming. If you do see the hype points there on YouTube, please press the button. But to subscribe also helps us to be found, and we are very grateful for your ongoing support. But please, for the moment, people, be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.